Well, good morning again. Daniel Valdez again. It is a pleasure and an honor to talk to you again, whether you're on YouTube or one of the podcast streaming services. I don't know. It's been a couple of weeks since I've recorded one of these. Thank you for joining me. Nice to hear from you, and hopefully it is nice to hear from me. Thank you all so much for joining. Today is going to be a little bit of a special day because Mother's Day is this Sunday. So I'm going to talk about my personal issues. No. I'm going to talk about Mom for a little bit and the relationship her and I have formed through the marching arts. And it's a bit of an interesting one, and I got a lot of context to give you behind that sort of stuff, and I don't know, we'll tie it into marching band and all that fun stuff. Before we start, no real news on the news front or whatever about when the season's gonna start or how it's gonna work and what's gonna happen, or I don't, it's just kind of a big question mark. It is a good sign that colleges are already declaring that they're gonna open up back in the fall. Probably look different. Each university is going to be a little bit different in how they decide to handle it, whether it's going to be half on campus or half digital or whatever they want to do. But it is a good sign that they're going to go forward with opening classes in the fall semester. So we'll see what that means for our wonderful activity. So let's talk Mother's Day stuff. Let's talk about Mom for a little bit. And I'm trying not to get too emotional on it or anything. She's not sick or anything. That's not why I'm doing it or anything like that. Like, she's perfectly healthy. But I wanted to just kind of share experiences and whatnot, and how she kind of helped me through my musical career. And I put that in quotes, and I will always put that in quotes because I'm technically not a musician anymore. So let's talk. Obviously, she was the biggest supporter of my little musical endeavor. And it was almost done blindly, almost kind of like an act of blind faith. And let me explain why. My mother lost her father when she was... Everyone's like, ooh, this got deep. My mother lost her father when she was, I think, 14 or 15 years old. There was a house of 8 kids there. So it was her mom plus 8 kids that were relatively around the same age. So she didn't get to experience too many extracurricular activities, because when that happened, 2 things happened. Whenever you've got a large family and one of the parents passes away, 2 things happen. One, you don't really want to do anything outside of, hey, I got to go to school and that's it. And 2, the family basically went into survival mode. We got to, we got to pay bills and whatnot, and we got to make sure we have food on the table to survive. So, she didn't have a chance to do very many extracurricular activities, because all of a sudden it became, hey, the family needs to survive. So she didn't get, the extracurricular activity stuff. She didn't really participate in that stuff when she was younger. I have an older brother. I have an older sister, Jessie and Naomi, respectively. They are older than I am. They are about 13 or 14 years older than I am. No, I am not adopted, I promise. And if you're watching on YouTube right now, they are that's the thumbnail photo. You can see me. That is when I was 8 years old. Yes, the hair is the exact same, and I'm proud of that. So my brother and sister did not really participate in extracurricular activities, especially in high school. They had their issues in high school trying to get schoolwork done, and, just other things that were going on. So they didn't really participate in that stuff. So think about it. Mom didn't really participate in stuff that required a lot of practice after school. My brother and sister didn't really participate in that stuff. Then, jackass Daniel shows up and goes, "Hey, I want to play music. I want to play really loud music in the house all the time." And Mom was like, "Okay, sure." So, part of elementary school music class was that you played the recorder. Yes, you played the recorder. You learned about treble clef a little bit, and you learned about time signatures and how to clap rhythms, but the main thing was the recorder, and we did recorder concerts, and I'm sure all the parents were just sitting there with earmuffs on thinking, oh, gosh, I hope this is a phase. So she bought me my first recorder. It was $5. I'm pretty sure she still has it in the house somewhere at her place. I haven't seen that thing in forever. So, she bought me that thing and, learned to play it, and I learned to play it pretty well. To the point where I was like, you know what, I think I want to be in band in middle school. And she goes, okay. And I was like, and I want to play baseball, and I want to play basketball too. And she goes, okay. Like, we made a deal right as I was going into the 6th grade. She said, the second your grades slip, I'm taking everything away. Everything. I'm taking the instrument away. I'm taking the basketball away. I'm taking the baseball away. I'm taking everything away. Your grades are number one. And that's how old school my mom is. She's a very old school person. Like, there's no compromise. It is the second your grades slip, and keep in mind I was a very good student all the way through my academic career, all the way through, kindergarten, all the way through college. My grades rarely slipped, and when they did, you would have thought that, Mom would just hit the panic button and she would try to investigate what led me to get 3 B's on my report card. Like, it was that. It was that kind of environment. So I remember her being enthusiastic about basketball and baseball, but the music thing was just kind of like, it's probably just a phase. We all know that it turned out to be a really, really, really long phase. I remember she took me to the middle school, Jackson Middle School in San Antonio, and it was like instrument tryout day. It was like, pick your 6th grader, you pick out your instrument. What they had us do is they had us fill out a form, and they said, okay, fill out, put your name down, and put down 3 instruments you want to play, and if you want to, you can rank them. So going into 6th grade, going into that room, I wanted to play 3. I had my 3 instruments. This is what they were. Number 1 was trumpet. Number 2 was trombone. Number 3 was percussion. Not a woodwind instrument in sight. I walked in with those 3 instruments in mind, and 30 minutes later, I walked out of that room, and I walked out of that band hall an oboe player. I don't know how it happened, but it happened, and the rest is history. I remember going back to the car, and she said, what did you choose? And I go, well, I didn't really choose. And I just handed her this piece of paper that had oboe with circles and stars around it. And that's the way the form came. And it just said, like, it had like little explanations of each instrument. Like, this is what it is, and this is how they contribute to the band as a whole. For the double-reeded instruments for oboe and bassoon, it was circled and it had stars next to it. And it said star instrument gets a lot of solos. I'm paraphrasing here. It has a lot of solos, a lot of practice needed, all this stuff. And she goes, what's an elbow? And I was like, oh no. I already annoy this woman enough. And now I have to explain. I didn't even know what it was. I honestly didn't know what it was. I didn't know. I mean, who knows that going into 6th grade? Not very many kids. So I was like, well, let's do some research, and this is what it is, and everything. So that happened. So I was like, okay, I got to try to get her on board. So I had to kind of explain, as I learned more about the instrument, I had to explain, the different materials I needed. And here's the thing. Anybody, parents talking to you, if you have a double reed player in the house, you know a couple of things. Number 1, you're going to hear very interesting sounds coming from the room when they practice. And number 2, it is an expensive instrument. Not just the hardware itself, not just the actual instrument itself, but you got to buy, wood and corks and yarn and a knife and all sorts of stuff to make reeds. And then you got to pay for private lessons. It's almost like it's like you can't get an oboe player's license unless you take private lessons. It's not just highly encouraged, it's almost required. And not to say it's not for every other instrument, it's just really, really highly suggested. So I had to say, hey, before I started taking private lessons, hey, I need a reed. Hey, I need this. And those are like, depending on where you go, a pre-made oboe reed can cost like $10 or $12. We didn't have a lot of money back then. So, I was trying to convince her that, this is worth it. I know it's expensive and I'm really sorry. And, she would get frustrated anytime I needed a reed. Just because, and I understood where she was coming from. She didn't know about what I was doing. Like, she was just I was just going to go over there and play music. She didn't know much about the instrument, and, the internet was just still in its infancy, so it was difficult to find information about that sort of stuff and try to get into it, and, it was difficult for her because she's trying to connect with me on that stuff, and it was a tough time. It was a tough time doing that, So that thing happened. So then I go through middle school, and the grades stay up, and I start getting pretty decent at the instrument. So I go, okay, Mom, here's what I want to do. It's like, what do you want to do for high school? It's like, here's what I want to do. I got two options here. Number one, I want to try out for the basketball team because I had a decent jump shot. She was like, okay, that's great. Very enthusiastic. Number two, I said, I want to try out for the band. She goes, oh. Like, he's still not out of this phase yet. I was like, I'm sorry. I said, I gave her a plan. I said, here's what I want to do. I want to practice for, like, the next month and a half. Like, super hard. Like, really, really hard. Get all my major scales down, minor scales, arpeggios, chromatic. I want to play the prepared piece as best as I can. I basically want to memorize it. I want to do as best as I can. I want to go all out with this. If I don't like the placement I got, if I don't like the placement I received from the band, then I'll just say that I'm not going to join the band, and then I'll try out for the basketball team. If I didn't make the basketball team, then I had no backup plan. I had no backup plan. I probably would not be talking to you right now. So she goes, okay. So I practiced my horn and did that whole thing, and I was like, okay, cool. I go into the audition. It was very intimidating. Show up, directors are there, play my stuff, leave the room. I ended up making top ensemble, wind ensemble, my freshman year, second chair. And there were like 9 or 10 oboe players in the school or something like that. So I was like, okay, well then I guess I'm joining band. So I tell Mom about that. I'm super excited, and she's like, well, I'm really proud of you. So, and then she goes, are you sure you're not going to try out for the basketball team? I was like, well, I can't. I mean, it's almost impossible. We actually had one trombone player who was on the basketball team and did band. I don't know how he did it, but that guy was awesome. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm a band person now. So then I was like, okay, well, here's the thing. I can't play my oboe during marching band. I need a saxophone. She goes, what? Another instrument? And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing to this woman? Fortunately, I had a cousin who played saxophone in the band, in a different band in a different school in the city. So he loaned me his saxophone for the 2 years that I played saxophone, and I was drum major junior, senior year. So I got to do that, and then, as we all know, marching band can be very expensive, especially if you're part of a really, really awesome group that goes and travels to BOA regionals and travels to nationals, and those trips are very expensive, and there's instrument fees and there's uniform things, and the costs add up. So it was a tough sell. Like, oh, the instrument fees due, Mom, I'm sorry, and the uniform fees due, and oh, by the way, I need $800 to go to to go to nationals my senior year. Pretty please. Fundraising was a lot more difficult to do back then, just because the amount of revenue streams, the amount of fundraising streams are multiplied nowadays because of the internet, and you're able to social media and whatnot. It was very difficult to fundraise money for a band camp back then. So I remember, when was it? I want to say it was my sophomore year. And we had planned a trip to Washington, D.C. We were going to visit all sorts of stuff. We were going to visit the Washington Monument, Lincoln Memorial, all that stuff. And it was, the rule in the district was you could take any trip out of state as many years in a row as you want, but we're more likely to approve the trip if you're going to be competing at some point. So we're like, okay, fine. So we booked some sort of random wind ensemble festival, which we did. We won that thing. And so we booked that. So I was like, hey, this is what the trip is going to cost. And my mom, I remember her telling me flat out, you're not going. I said, what? And she's like, you're not going. It's too expensive. And I was like, oh my God. Like, and this was at a time in my life when I was struggling a little bit with school, but struggling meaning, mostly B's during class. I was distracted. And, I was going through that teenager phase where it was just like, the world sucks and, that whole thing. So I wasn't having a good time, and I just kind of really needed to get out of the house, even if it costs like $600 or something like that. And I remember making a deal with her, hey, if I get my grades up, if I mow the lawn, if I do this. She goes, okay. So that whole thing happens, and I'm able to go on the trip, and it was a big turning point because I had a lot of fun. And, I got to see Washington, D.C., and I got to, be away from my parents for a little bit, and it was really neat. Then senior year came along, and keep in mind, during this whole time, and I'll go ahead and explain this, a lot of people who listen to this show, or this silly little show that I do, a lot of parents and are very enthusiastic about volunteering, being a part of the Band Booster organization, and doing everything that they can for the program. And I love you all to death. You all make, you impact your kids' lives in ways that you'll never know because of how enthusiastic and how gung-ho you are about helping the Bryant program out. And it's really neat to see. I didn't necessarily have that. Mom would she would work the concession stand mainly my senior year. It was almost like an obligation because I was the head drum major that year. So it would, I kind of coaxed her into it. I was like, I kind of need you to play ball here. Like, I know you get most of the information from me about what's going on with the band and stuff like that, but I would really appreciate it if you volunteered in some way. She's like, well, I'll sell concessions. I was like, okay, cool. And it's not that she didn't love me or anything like that. It's just that wasn't her thing. I have very old school parents. My stepdad and mom are very old school. They both came from households where the parents didn't go to school for anything positive. If you were asked to go to school, back then, and I mean way back then, when they were being raised, if the parents were asked to be at school, the first thought was, okay, what did he do wrong? What did he do? How much is it going to cost me? Like, it was kind of that fatalistic attitude. So I had to kind of break her of that. I was like, hey, is there anything you can do for volunteer work? She's like, well, I'll do concessions. I'll sell some concessions at the football game. Of course, we had the deal where we sold concessions for the football games, and of course that money went directly to the band. And yes, that sort of fundraiser thing that's been around forever. That's a great revenue stream there for the program. So she would do that, and when it was time to perform at halftime, she would stop slinging Chick-fil-A sandwiches, and she would come out there and watch me. And I always tried to find her in the stands. Anytime we were coming off the field, I was always able to find her and kind of wave and connect with her like that. Let's talk about that whole blind faith thing for a second. My mom really wanted me to play sports because It was a good outlet. It was a good way to use my energy. Obviously, I have a lot of it. And it was something she could get. It was something she understood. She could sit through a basketball game. She could sit through a baseball game. She could do all that stuff. But the music thing was a little bit different. It was a hard sell because she had a hard time connecting with it. And I really appreciated that because she never gave up on that. She would go to the concerts. She would go to the football games. She didn't really go to the contest. It wasn't really her thing, which I told her was perfectly okay. Don't worry about it. I'll be safe, and I promise I'll come back. I'll try to come back with something shiny around my neck or something. But she understood how much that meant to me. So she kind of blindly followed it. Like, I don't really understand. And she told me this once. She's like, I kind of wish you had played sports, but I can see that you're really good at this. So I will always be behind you, no matter what you want to do with music. And of course I owe her everything because, some parents would kind of just, I don't understand this and I don't want to understand it. And then they kind of haphazardly participate in their kids' activities. But no, she was always asking me how practice went. One of the things she used to do, and I loved this, is during my senior year, my niece, she would take care of my niece. My niece was like 3 or 4 at the time that I was a senior. And Mom would bring her by every now and then at the end of practice. And, my mom would go, how does because I'm on the front podium, and my mom would tell my niece, how does Daniel go? Bum, 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 bum. And of course she would giggle and laugh and stuff. And I would go over and give him big sweaty hugs because, that's what I do. And, I remember her doing that, and it was really nice because sometimes there were some rehearsals where, I was really run down, and I tried to keep the energy up, and just kind of seeing her out there with my niece was really really nice of her to do. There was a story I was going to tell right now, but I forgot what it was. Anyways, yeah, and she even said during college, like when I was going to college, she's like, if you want to do the music thing, do what you need to do. I ultimately decided not to do that. But, she still asks, she asks, are you going to go to the drum corps contest this year? And, I told her that, unfortunately DCI was canceled this year. And she goes, oh, and then she kind of looked at me for a second, like, are you okay? And I was like, oh, it's, there's nothing we can do about it. It's sad, but, it is what it is. And she goes, oh, okay. But yeah, she was supportive the entire way. Even when she didn't understand what the heck I was doing. She didn't know the instrument I was playing. What more can you ask for? She's the best. And I'm glad she's still around. I'm glad she's, I'm glad we're able to, I'm over at my parents' house at least once a week, having breakfast or just talking to him about, whatever's going on. I'm glad to have her around still. And, she's getting up on years. She's in her 70s. Yeah, I know. I'm old. So, if you still have your mother around, obviously, hug him a little tighter this year. It was the last couple of months, and the last couple of months I've done their grocery shopping. What did I see? I saw something yesterday. It wasn't not yesterday, but like a couple of weeks ago. That's a big gap in time. I don't care. There was something on there that said, the roles have been reversed. Kids are yelling at their parents for leaving the house. For sneaking out and leaving the house to go get groceries. The last couple of months, I've gotten my parents' groceries. I was like, you're not going anywhere. You give me a list of what you need, and I will go to the grocery store and I will buy you whatever the hell you want. You tell me what you want. You need ice cream. You need a specific ice cream. You need something. You need whatever, and be as descriptive as possible, because it was the last thing I want. Last thing I want to do is buy the wrong tomato, because I know I'm never going to hear the end of it. I like doing things for them because they are both, they're getting older, and when this whole pandemic thing hit, I was very scared for them. I didn't want anything to happen to them. My stepdad has underlying health issues. Mom is pretty healthy, and I just didn't. I want them around for a while. that's pretty much the skinny of it. But yeah, the whole music career thing, the whole marching band thing. When I needed money to go on trips, she was there. When I needed to go to practice, she was there. I mean, there were times where she's like, how many times are you going to practice? I think she said that like freshman year. How often do you guys practice? I was like, we practice practically every day. Then we got a football game. It takes a lot of work. But, I needed to go to practice. She was there. I needed to go to a concert. She was there. I figured out the story I was going to tell you. Sophomore year, I had a concert at UTSA. And it was one of those concerts, and I've explained it in the past, where it was me and a flute player playing like a duet with an orchestral background, and with the orchestra in the background. It was crazy that I got those opportunities so young. So she took me to the concert, and she dressed up, and she was like, I'll sit in the concert, and it's just one piece, right? And I was like, yes, Mom, it's only one piece. So I was like, it's one piece, and then I'll be done, and then you can do whatever, you can leave or whatever. So she drops me off like where the music department is, and I said, I think the auditorium is around the corner. She goes, okay. So I go in, I warm up, I go on stage, I play my thing, great, awesome, I get off stage. I come back out, and it was upon a total about 45 minutes. I come back out, and she's got this really angry look on her face. And I'm laughing, and I'm like, hey, I did pretty well, right? And she goes, I never went inside. I said, what do you mean? And she goes, I don't know where the auditorium is, Daniel. I missed everything. She got lost on UTSA campus. She's like, I got lost. I didn't know where it was. Nobody knew where this concert was. I said, so you were outside for 45 minutes? She's like, yes, I was. Let's go. And I was like, oh. I was like, so mad. I was like, oh, man. I didn't know where it was. Like, what was I supposed to do? I drove that woman insane. I still do. But you know what? That's one of the perks of having a mom. You drive them crazy. You make weird decisions like playing oboe and playing in the marching band and asking them to sell Chick-fil-A sandwiches, and, ask them to wear the buttons and put the decals on the cars and listen to you practice even though they don't want to. You ask your moms so much to do so much for you and to put up with you so much, especially if you're a part of the music project, especially if you're a part of marching band. And they do it. Even if they don't understand, it's that blind faith that a mother has for their children that makes them special. So, in honor of Mom, raise your glass. Thank you, Mom, for everything that you did. Thank you for all the reads. Thank you for taking me to the concerts. Thank you for putting up with me. And happy Mother's Day. And happy Mother's Day to everybody out there listening. And yeah, just you all are the best. I really appreciate you all. And, here's to another year with your mom. I am done here, and we'll talk to you all next week, and we'll see how that goes. And thank you so much for listening, and I'm done here. Take care. Adios. Bye-bye.